Across the UK, lots of old houses are now under threat. We've already seen the headlines: failed cavity wall insulation, spray foam disasters, plenty of homes that have been rendered uninhabitable by well-intentioned retrofits. But the problem is already probably wider than that, and are we about to make it even worse? Before we go any further, it's worth saying that this isn't our usual kind of video. Normally we just show what we're doing, muddle through, and let the house project teach us. But over the last year and a bit, we've lived with and had to undo real damage caused by well-intentioned alterations applied to the wrong kind of building. So this isn't a how-to. It's not a call to copy everything we do. It's a defence of some of the decisions we're going to be making with our home, and how some of those decisions fly in the face of received wisdom in the construction industry. If I don't say it now, it's going to just turn into more fights in the comments section. And I think what follows is essential consumer advice for anyone who owns and cherishes an old building, because some of the common advice out there can cause serious harm. Thousands of people are now living with damp caused by retrofit insulation and modern products applied in the wrong places. We do need to better insulate our homes, but in a way that doesn't cause damp.
It's important to understand that the problem with moisture in old buildings is not just about water from outside getting in, it's a problem of water inside being unable to get out.
Most of the construction industry is trained to build new homes with modern materials using modern assumptions about moisture control. But when we apply those techniques and materials that way of thinking to older houses, we risk causing rot, mould and collapse. Even on the cottages, where we're very open about our love of natural materials, we encounter people who insist that their way, usually involving plastic membranes and vapour barriers, is the only way or the only correct way to control moisture in a building. And I'm afraid I think that's an unhelpful kind of certainty. And in old buildings, it can be genuinely dangerous.
Here in our kitchen, we're plastering with a mixture of quicklime and hemp fibres. The lime is a traditional binder which allows moisture to pass through it. The hemp offers some insulation value, a bit like straw in a cob wall. We want to try this technique as part of what we hope is a better way of working with old buildings, using natural breathable materials to gently insulate the walls, just to take the edge off on those coldest mornings. This isn't about replacing one rigid rulebook with another. It's about trying to respond to what the building has been trying to tell us since we arrived. In our loft, a modern plastic membrane, fitted about 25 years ago, ended up trapping moisture that had until then simply escaped harmlessly.
The water is condensed on the inside of the non-breather membrane which was installed. So that is the major problem, is the membrane.
Rafters rotted. Historic ceilings started to fail and fall. Roughly 20% of Britain's housing stock was built before the First World War, before cavity walls, before plastic membranes, before the idea that a building should be sealed airtight and mechanically ventilated. These buildings were designed around solid walls, vapour permeability, and the assumption that moisture would move and then leave. But time passed and the skills of our workforce moved on, and this house eventually met a new way of thinking, built around impermeable miracle materials. Yes, plastics and Portland cement came along. In our case, the fabric of our house was too fragile to cope with the strength of that intervention. A roll of impermeable roofing felt that was designed to be used in a different context, typically a ventilated roof. This is the one-size-fits-all fallacy. And the same mistakes are happening in countless homes across the country because many in the construction industry weren't taught how to speak the physical language of old buildings. I think it will end up in another scandal, and all because the building trade is dominated by one, apparently infallible way of thinking.
You've probably encountered a problem with this kind of thinking before. It's a form of fundamentalism, a belief system so confident in its internal logic, so concrete and so inflexible, that it leaves no room for context, nuance, flexibility, or contradiction. The dominant thinking of modern construction insists that moisture has to be kept out, resisted, sealed against at all costs, regardless of the building type. I'll somewhat ironically call this plastic fundamentalism. It's a system that has to work, because the system cannot accept that, in the wrong context, it might not work. Just like fundamentalism in religion or politics, this refusal to listen can be destructive. When I talk about plastic fundamentalism, I mean to describe a fundamentalist mindset that treats one construction system as universally applicable. This mindset is passed on by habits, training manuals, sales brochures, marketing, and well-meaning forums that haven't caught up with the science of old building conservation. We're not saying that modern methods can never work. In fact, in modern buildings, they can work extremely well. We're saying that when applied to our building, they carry too much risk. And yes, I can assert that, because we're living with some of its consequences and fighting to fix the damage every day. We're supporting our building's recovery from the consequences of this harmful way of thinking.
So that's why we're avoiding things like tanking, vapour barriers and plastic paint.
Hi Micaiah.
Hello.
Hi, so what are you doing today?
I'm splatting lime, straw and water onto a wall
Why are you doing that?
to keep this house warm, I think.
Right, okay. And who let you do that?
You?
Oh! What a silly mistake.
In traditional buildings, plastic surfaces stop moisture in one place, and it cannot escape up or down. Water still enters through daily living, cooking, breathing, washing, and once trapped, it has nowhere to go.
Good job.
Place an impermeable barrier above the insulation, and your joists will slowly rot. Put a vapour barrier under your insulation, and you will still experience moisture accumulating on the ceiling. And then mould grows. Think of all those older rental properties, incorrectly fitted with cheap impermeable retrofit materials and plastic paint, where all the black mould lives. That's why so many of our homes suffer persistent black mould, and it's obviously not the fault of the construction industry, it must be your fault for living in it wrong. Well, pardon me for breathing. The plastic fundamentalists say that it must be your fault for breathing, for showering, for daring to live in the house you live in. But it's not your fault. It's plastic and cement, trapping moisture for years where it doesn't belong. Many tradespeople are doing their best with the training and products they've been given, but we need to think differently to overcome the challenges ahead of us. Using lime, wood, straw, clay, hemp, these wonderful natural materials allow water to be absorbed when moisture spikes, and then released gradually to the outside. It's how traditional building envelopes were designed to work, and it's often called breathability, although it has nothing to do with lungs. It's just water being able to move slowly through a wall or a ceiling, and then escaping.
Would you believe me if I say that there could be a benefit to traditional buildings and not just problems? Old buildings weren't designed to exclude moisture like modern buildings are, so you might think that they're worse. However, they were designed to release moisture back into the atmosphere better than modern buildings do. What modern building techniques have forgotten is the essential capacity of a house to dry out. We stop water from entering, but by using plastic we stop the building fabric from being able to dry out too. Add some spores of fungus and the house simply ferments like a compost heap, or like a week-old sandwich in a plastic bag. Yeah, so you're just taking the plastic off the carrots, aren't you?
Yeah, whereas they go mouldy, don't they?
Yeah. Right. Who knew?
Like a house.
Yeah.
That would go mouldy too if you wrapped it in plastic.
Can you see what happens when the plastic fundamentalism meets real buildings and real moisture? Old buildings and new buildings are fundamentally different systems. Modern retrofit solutions are largely tailored to cavity wall construction, where moisture is expected to be excluded entirely. It's totally understandable that all of these products and the training around them are targeted at the massive 80% of Britain's housing stock that is newer than 1919. But older solid wall buildings are designed to behave differently. They absorb, store and release moisture through their fabric. They sweat, they wick. Treating solid walls as if they were cavity walls is where so many problems begin. Because old building systems are designed to allow moisture to move freely, block that breathability, the ability for moisture to move through the system, and damage happens. And often in those hard to reach places where you cannot see it until it's too late. Think how many retrofit schemes are happening across the country now, across the world, as we race to better insulate our homes and save energy. And we probably should be doing that. But how many of the installers of this insulation will respect and preserve an older building's capacity to dry? Or are we on the cusp of making yet another generational mistake in the way we treat our homes?
This isn't fringe thinking either. Historic England, SPAB, even one of the British standards, all caution against using impermeable layers in traditional buildings in case they cause damage. Now even the building regulations are beginning to reflect this more clearly. More people are aware treating an old building like a modern one is not just a stylistic mistake. It risks being a serious technical misunderstanding. It is to fundamentally misunderstand the physics of this traditional context in a way that's risky, costly and damaging. Just Google vapour control barrier, see what comes up. A sea of companies selling products, making scientific claims that, well, they are written by the marketing department. The quality of advice available to most consumers on this issue is incredibly poor, and most of it is attached to a vested interest. Our only interest here is in the long-term health of our home and the planet. So before spending large sums on complex engineered products in an old building, it's worth pausing. Can we apply Occam's razor and look for a solution made up of the smallest possible set of elements in a way that's appropriate to our building? In many cases, the safest and most durable approach is also the simplest. Materials that are inexpensive, repairable, easy to work with, and compatible with traditional construction. The materials we've used for millennia. That tends to be better for the building, better for the environment, and better for the household budget. But it's not the advice you'll often hear, because the modern retrofit market is now worth billions of pounds, and it's growing. There are powerful incentives to keep selling increasingly complex solutions, even when simpler ones may be more appropriate.
You can see the same pattern in something as ordinary as windows. Older windows were once rejected for being too drafty, so regulations pushed us towards sealing them, and companies moved to only selling airtight units. Then, when these airtight sealed homes stopped ventilating properly, the rules changed again, insisting on permanent trickle vents to compensate. The result is a strange paradox. A traditional window that ventilates naturally through its joints is seen by many as non-compliant, while a sealed window with a plastic hole cut into it is considered acceptable. Like, you can't have a drafty old window because we insist on you having a new window that's had a hole cut in it. I mean, yeah. Builders won't install a simpler, leakier window because as far as they're concerned it breaks the rules. Homeowners hesitate to fit second-hand windows, worried that a surveyor or a solicitor or worse the council will raise concerns in the future. But what matters, and what the building regulations increasingly recognise, is that it's important that ventilation is provided, not how that ventilation is provided. There's a huge and frightening body of design codes and marketing literature and a ton of advice on forums and YouTube and everything, all pointing in the other direction, and I feel a deep responsibility here to push back a bit. What we're saying is that in an old building like ours, the safest move is sometimes to stop, step back and think carefully about what the structure actually needs, rather than what the market is offering. In traditional buildings, ventilation by natural infiltration has always been part of the system, and if an older style window meets the ventilation requirements, then that approach is within the spirit of the regulations. In our case, we replaced a modern window that barely opened at all with a double glazed timber sash that allows the room to breathe again. It's not perfect, but it restores ventilation by design. I would argue that all of this is possible because the regulations themselves are very clear on one thing above all others. The long-term structural integrity of the building has to come first. Work that damages the structure of traditional buildings, that compromises the historical fabric, is highlighted as a risk to be avoided by the regulations and the guidance. That means that we have to slow down and read the regs in a way that serves their purpose, to protect the building, not just to use the most literal wording as a weapon in a way that can be dangerous. Changing minds is never easy, and even building control officers at the council will sometimes find it hard to adapt their thinking for traditional buildings. They have to interpret incredibly complex guidance across every building type imaginable, so let's not try to blame the council, eh? The good news is that the regulations are changing in the right direction. What's lagging behind is the everyday advice, training and instincts of the industry. That gap between guidance and good conservation practice is where most of the damage still happens. So if you're ever unsure, ask somebody who's working on your property. How will this affect the building's ability to dry? Is this work compatible with a traditional solid wall structure? What happens if moisture gets trapped behind this layer? Because any answer that fobs you off, well, I'm afraid it isn't based on anything other than decades of dogma. You have the right to say no to a bodge. You have the right to choose materials that have worked for centuries over a miracle product that hasn't been tested on a 150-year-old stone wall. If the advice you're given doesn't account for how your building dries out, it could be a genuine risk to your biggest asset.
This isn't about completely rejecting modern progress, the building trades, or regulation. It's about resisting certainty, when that certainty ignores the context of your situation and leads you off a cliff. Of course, everything we're talking about here applies specifically to traditional, solid wall buildings, not to modern cavity construction, where very different rules apply. But it is still a warning. Fundamentalism, whether in building methods or in religious belief or politics, stops people from thinking, from listening to one another. It hides the damage, and it punishes a life of experimentation and discovery. We want to live differently. We're reading what our house is telling us. We're running experiments, we observe and we try to respond sympathetically to what the building needs, not what the algorithm tells us that we need.
Over the coming months you'll see us making a lot of choices that might seem unusual. Lime instead of cement, hemp, maybe wool instead of fiberglass, old windows, old cupboards, old fittings instead of new.
Some will say that we're doing it wrong, and maybe sometimes we will be.
But we're trying to work with our building's original design and not against it.
This isn't an argument for doing nothing or for ripping out impermeable materials without understanding the risks. It's an argument for slowing down, for diagnosing carefully and choosing the least harmful intervention that fits the building. And of course, only time will tell.
We'll keep showing the mess, the mistakes and what actually works for us.
We hope that by watching us figure this out, you might find it easier to trust the evidence of your eyes and ears when you're told that there's only one right way to do something.
And thanks for watching. Please join us again as we put some of these funny ideas into practice.
Because this beautiful uncertainty is part of what we're doing here, the experiment of a lifetime, and you're very welcome to follow along.
Some of you have been asking for new ways to support us. So if you'd like to buy us a coffee or buy us a box of screws, then please follow the link in the description below.
Yeah, I don't like coffee, but I love screws.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for watching and hopefully see you next time. Bye.
Bye.